Today we're gonna smoke and roast a bottom round in the Ninja Woodfire. Welcome to the Salted Pepper, where we cook for real life using real food and we keep it real simple. So before we season up and get our bottom round onto the smoker, we first need to add the pellets. I'm using Kona brand oak pellets for this. I really like the flavor with the beef. You can use any type of pellets you like though. Once the pellets are added, we're gonna turn the Ninja Woodfire on, select the smoker mode, and take your temperature to 175 degrees Fahrenheit. You can leave the time at 4 hours and hit start. And now it's gonna go through the ignition process and start to ignite the pellets. When you're using the smoker function, you do not have to hit the Woodfire flavor button. You see it's blinking. That will automatically ignite on the smoker function. So while the pellets are doing their initial burn off period, which I like to do somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes, that gets rid of all the heavy smoke, which can leave sort of a bitter and acrid taste on food. It's not as important with larger cuts of meat as it is with smaller cuts of meat and also like vegetables. But I'm just in the practice of doing it all the time and it gives me a chance to get the meat set up. So ordinarily, what I like to do with a bottom round is salt it the night before and leave it on a rack in the refrigerator and let it air out. Okay, so not wrapped overnight. Then I will put the seasoning rub on. What that does for the meat is the moisture from the meat comes out, it's pulled out by the salt, but then through osmosis, the salt is distributed. It becomes liquid and it distributes through the meat, so it flavors the meat a little bit more. It is not absolutely necessary, okay? Sometimes I'll just put the rub on and put it in the refrigerator. And sometimes, like today, I do none of that. And I simply take the bottom round out of the package. We're gonna blot it dry. That is important because you want it to be dry for the seasonings to stick. Now you can put a binder on. A lot of people like to use mustard. That's perfectly fine. I just never have done that. I just blot it dry. I don't recommend oiling it because actually that will cause it to slip off the meat in my experience. So I blot it dry and then we're gonna season it up. What you choose to season your bottom round with is completely up to you. Salt and pepper works fine. But I will give you one tip. If you want to use salt and pepper, use coarse or restaurant style pepper. And you can find that in grocery stores now. So it's coarse. It's a little bit more like freshly cracked black pepper, which you could do as well. It's certainly not as fine as just a regular table pepper. That works really well for a rub, okay? What I'm gonna use though is a custom blend that has coarse pepper, a little bit of salt, garlic, onion, and paprika. I don't use any sugar in my rubs when I'm doing beef ordinarily. So there's no sugar in this rub and it really is lovely. Now to rub the meat, what I like to do is broadcast it over. And I try to keep a dirty hand and a clean hand. So this is gonna be my dirty hand. So broadcast it over and pat it in. And keep repeating that until the entire surface is covered. The amount that you use will depend on the size of the meat, but I usually like to have about a half of a cup available. All right, so this is the bottom. This is gonna be on the rack on the grill grate. So now we'll flip it over. I'm gonna talk about the fat cap a little bit. Let me turn it this way. Okay, so can you trim this up? Absolutely, you can. I'm not going to. And the reason being is that the fat cap is pretty thin right here, and then it thickens up as we get further down the meat, but also the meat changes, so it becomes thick to thin. So I'm gonna keep the fat cap just as it is to protect this, and hopefully it won't overcook too much. Now, we're definitely gonna have different internal temperatures on this meat after we roast it because the thinner end is going to have a higher internal temperature than the thicker part. And that's great, especially when you're feeding a crowd, because if people like their roast beef a little bit more well done, you're gonna give them this end. And if they like it more rare or medium rare, you're gonna go to this end. So that works out perfectly here. So again, trim or don't trim, it's totally up to you. And let's get the seasoning on the rest of it now. smoking and roasting a bottom round gives you that nice smoky flavor all throughout, and then a nice crispy fat cap on top. It's so delicious for thinly sliced roast beef sandwiches, but it is a two-step process. So the first part, we're going to smoke it at a low temp of 175 Fahrenheit. And we're gonna do that until it hits around 115 degrees Fahrenheit if you like your roast beef medium rare to rare, okay, like I do. If you don't, take that internal temperature up to about 125, okay? Then we're gonna hit it with a high heat on roast, and we're gonna get everything crisped up until it reaches about 10 degrees below your final serving temperature, okay? So mine is gonna be about 125-ish is where I wanna hit with the roasting. Then I'm gonna take it out, let it sit, and carryover heat will bring it up to about 130-ish, which is where I like it, okay? So definitely think about your end serving temperature. And on my website, I will have my recommended times, temperatures, things like that for the various ways that you may wanna serve your roast beef. All right, let's get the probes in. So you don't have to use a probe. You could use an instant read thermometer and just check it in about 90 minutes and check it in the thickest part of the roast. I'm gonna start with the probe that comes with the Woodfire, if you have one of the models that comes with a probe. And I'm gonna put it right here, which is right in the center, and then push it in so that it is in the center here. Okay, you wanna measure at the thickest part. Then when we get outside, I'll plug that in. And then I like my ThermoWorks Dot because it sits outside of the grill and I can just sort of glance at it and see. So if I don't have the app turned on my phone, I can just glance at it. And plus it just lets me make sure that I'm measuring in two different areas because I do not want to overcook this. So this one I'm gonna put in right about there. And again, get it into the center. And it should be pretty close to this thermometer, but not touching. All right, there we go. Now we can get it onto the smoker. All right, so once you have about a 15-minute burn off on your pellets, open up and let all that smoke out. That is that bitter, thick white smoke we wanna have burned off. Now I'm gonna put the bottom round, I'm gonna leave it on the rack and put it right here on the smoker. And then plug this in. Depending on what model you have, this might look a little bit different. Then it's gonna prompt me to shut the lid, which of course we're going to because we wanna trap in that smoke. And there we go. Now what I'm gonna do is monitor the temperature. So I'm gonna turn my Dot on. The internal temperature is about 49, 50 degrees. I want to set an alarm temperature, and we want that to be at 115. So now it will alarm once it reaches that set temperature in case I'm not looking at the app. With the Ninja Woodfire XL Pro Connect, there's an app that you can use, and I'm gonna set that up right now. So there's two things you can do. I'm gonna do the time cook because I wanna be able to give you guys a reference of how much time it took. Usually it takes about 2 hours to get up to the 115 Fahrenheit, but you could also do thermometer, and then you would set it up where it shuts off at your target temp. I don't wanna do that though. So I'm sticking with time to cook. And you can see right now it's set up, it's 55 degrees Fahrenheit, and it will just keep reading. It'll give me the countdown, let me know everything that's going on. And when it hits 115 degrees, we'll switch over to the roasting function. All right, so probe number 1 jumped from 113 all the way up to 118. Probe 2 is at 114. So we are going to stop the smoking part of this. And now I'll let you see what it looks like now, and then we'll start the roasting part. So it looks really, really good, but this is the important part. There are hardly any juices that have come out because we slow smoked this or slow cooked it. So now what I'm gonna do, which is totally optional, I'm gonna transfer this piece of meat with the rack onto a tray, set the tray on the grill. That way we will catch all the juices that come down and you can use that for au jus. So now turn the wood fire back on. This time we're gonna go to roast. 425 is what we want. That is the highest temperature setting, and that's what we want. And then for the time, we can take it to 30 minutes, but usually it takes about 15. My goal temperature is gonna be 125. You can bypass the preheat by holding the start-stop button, and it's gonna say add food, open and lower the lid, and it will go right into the cook time. So the dot is reading 120 and the app is reading 124. Let's take a peek because it's been just over 15 minutes. And in my experience, 15 minutes is about the way I like it for the outside, and it looks absolutely gorgeous. I'm gonna pull it off because I would rather undercook than overcook. It looks amazing. All right, now I did not remove the probes. The reason why I leave them in while the meat is resting is number one, I can monitor the temp. Not that it makes much difference now, right? But I do like to just keep an eye on it. That's especially important if you're cooking something like chicken, where you want to make sure it gets up to that 165. But the more important reason is if you remove them right now, the juices will start to pour out of those little holes, okay? So I just leave it alone, and now we have to let it rest for at least 30 minutes, okay? For this size of a roast, you wanna let it sit for a good 30 minutes. The other thing you can do is let it cool for 30 minutes, wrap it in plastic wrap or foil, whatever you want, and put it in the refrigerator if you wanted to serve it cold, because it is a little bit easier to slice when it's cold. But today, we're gonna let it sit for 30 minutes, then I'm gonna slice it up. All right, here we go. So before I put the rub on, I should say, I sort of looked to see where the grain was going, and I do believe that we will be slicing from this side down. But look, if you can't tell, don't worry about it. If you start slicing the wrong way, just turn it around and start slicing the other way, okay? So don't stress that. All right, here we go. Moment of truth. Now the first couple slices are gonna be a little bit more done. As we get towards the center, it'll be a lot more rare. All right, so make very thin slices with a sharp knife, or a meat slicer is even better. Oh my gosh, this is looking absolutely wonderful. Oh my gosh, it's so juicy. Look at that. I probably could have let it sit a little bit longer. Oh my gosh, this is so good. As we get further in, we're getting a little bit more medium rare. Wow, this is gorgeous. I'm not gonna cut any more because you only wanna cut what you're gonna be serving at one time. It's easier to wrap this and reheat it if you wanted to have a hot roast beef when it's not sliced. If you slice it and then reheat it, you're gonna cook it a lot more than if you wrap it and reheat it. I am thrilled with the way that this came out though. It is perfect for me. I would say that this is a medium rare and a perfect medium rare. So if you like it a little bit more done, just cook it a little bit longer on the roast until it gets to about 10 degrees less than what you want to serve it. Mine got up to 135 degrees before I pulled the probe, okay? Just so you know, and it sat for 30 minutes. Okay, let's make a sandwich. Oh my gosh. Like this is just lovely. So I have a homemade roll that I'm gonna use, and guess what's on top? The same rub that I used on the beef. So it turned out great. And I'm gonna put on a little bit of a homemade copycat horsey sauce. You could use mayonnaise. You could also use, I have an Alabama barbecue sauce. That's a white sauce. It goes perfectly with roast beef. It is so delicious. All right, let's get this piled on. Oh my gosh. This looks so good. That's a little thicker than what I would want on a sandwich. Oh my gosh. I'm going to get some of this too. Oh my goodness gracious. Look at that. Wow. That's a lot of bread. All right. I'm going to cut it in half and then give it a taste. All right. So quick recap. 4.5 pound bottom round. I gave you the rub recipe already. We smoked it for 2.5 hours at 175 until the internal temp reached right around 120. Switched over to the roast function at 425 degrees Fahrenheit, and that took about 16 minutes. And I pulled it when the temperature was just under 125. So pull it off the smoker when it is 10 degrees less than how you want to serve it. And I wanted to serve mine at around 135, which is medium rare. And I got that, and it's perfect. Let's taste it. It's a lot of bread. I probably would have piled on the roast beef a little bit more than this, but hey, oh my gosh, it looks good. That is delicious. Now I will say that my ratio of beef to roll is way off, so that's not good. But let's go ahead and pull this apart a little bit. So delicious.